Greetings everyone, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, here to bring you another episode review from Season 6 of The Loud House. Today's episode is titled, Dine and Bash. First we'll discuss the plot, and then my thoughts and critiques with my final score. So, let's get right into it. In this episode, the kids take over Lynn's table while their father is doing a gig with the Doodads. But when celebrity chef Guy Grazer unexpectedly arrives for an episode of Kitchen Ambush, and assuming their performance is going to jeopardize the future of the restaurant, they try to retrieve the flash drive containing the footage of what happened before anyone has the chance to see it. Unfortunately, they can't stop the episode from airing, thanks to the power of very fast video editing, and yet it turns out Guy really liked what he experienced at Lynn's table and says he'll definitely come back again when the actual chef is around. Well, that concludes the plot of the episode, so now we come to my thoughts and critiques. Despite the more critical and sometimes justified complaints that have been said about Season 6 at the time of this video being made, this episode genuinely felt like it came out of Seasons 2 or 3, or maybe as an indirect follow-up to certain episodes from Season 4, but I'll talk more about that in just a bit. Basically, the way the story played out got me thinking about the kid-centered episodes prior to Season 5, and it was the kids that really made this episode worthwhile. As I always say, I appreciate every episode where the kids don't fight among themselves and work together to achieve a common goal, in most cases, including this one, for their dad, and they try to prove they can handle any situation without failure and without feeling like they let their dad down, just like the episode Job Insecurity demonstrated. Their work in the restaurant was very similar to how they handled themselves in the episodes Cooked and Much Ado About Noshing, both in terms of serving tables and preparing food. It looked like Luann was the one taking control over most of the cooking, and she seemed to know what to do more than any of her other siblings. That makes sense when you think back to her time in the episode Feast or Family, so if this was supposed to be an indirect callback, it worked pretty well. She was still able to make out some of the recipes from her dad's cookbook after Lenny literally used it like her dad told her to. Yep, only Lenny would be capable of misinterpreting simple instructions. But yes, it would appear their dad taught them well in the ways of food service, and seeing how it's a family-owned business, well, I think you can figure that one out for yourself. So the kids really went out of their way to make sure they didn't ruin the reputation of Lynn's table by trying to offer the best food and service they could, and that wasn't going to be easy given who their final customer of the night was. So now would be a good time to talk about the antagonist of the episode. Guy Grazer, or basically the Gordon Ramsay of the Loud House, makes his second appearance in the series, his first being in present tense. From making harsh and sarcastic criticisms to always coming off as angry, the writers really captured how Gordon Ramsay would act in animated form, and it was hilarious. He has a show called Kitchen Ambush, a reference to Kitchen Nightmares. The premise to his show is to make surprise visits to restaurants to see just how good they are, and honestly, I really like that idea. But why is that? Well, think back to the episode A Fridge Too Far, where Timothy McCall said he tasted all the same boring and uninspired food Lynn Sr. was going to originally prepare for him. When tasting something that wasn't the same old dish, and something that a soon-to-be restaurant owner concocted from his own cookbook with very little time to prepare, Tim said it was classic, comforting, and tasted like something that was made out of someone's home kitchen. That's why I didn't take issue with Guy when he said his surprise visit was called an ambush and not something when it's convenient for the chef. Being put on the spot in an effort to see how well you can perform under pressure is actually a good way of determining if you got what it takes to be among the best, so I in good faith cannot say Mr. Grazer is a true antagonist. He's more like a critic weeding out the good and original chefs from the bad and predictable ones, and when it comes to professionalism, that's not exactly the wrong thing to do. Yes, the added pressure of being around someone famous and trying to appease them can be a little overwhelming, and yet the kids managed to put together a few edible dishes, even though Guy didn't really eat too much of anything. With all things considered, I can see why the kids didn't want to call their dad for help besides not wanting to interrupt his concert. Not only was it shown in Grazer's debut episode that he can come down really hard on anyone trying to perfect their craft, but the kids once said their dad is very sensitive to raised voices. I can only imagine how things would have turned out if their dad didn't have a gig and tried serving a meal to Mr. Grazer. I can already hear the sounds of an alpaca crying in the distance. The kids wanted to prove they could handle the restaurant on their own, and they didn't want to look responsible for potentially sealing the fate of their business. The kids having a little adventure trying to stop Guy from airing the footage he recorded played out in typical typical Loud House style, perhaps being a bit more destructive than it needed to be, but all their worries were for nothing when they came home and saw Mr. Grazer praising his time at the restaurant despite the craziness he witnessed. It warmed his heart to see kids helping their absent father in what he called a true family-run business, and that's high praise and publicity from a celebrity in the cooking world. Their dad truly appreciated everything his kids did for him, and maybe it's a sign that they should start working there a little more often. I guess they would have to, since it appeared Grant was quitting his job at the end. He said he was going to pursue his passion of being a full-time wizard after thinking he legit had magical powers when Lisa's satellite destroying machine went haywire. I don't know how that's going to pay the bills, but hey, all the power to him. It's not the most ridiculous thing to come out of the episode though. There is something much more ridiculous that needs to be addressed, but first, let's get to my final thoughts. Overall, this was a great kid-focused and pre-season 5 oriented episode, and it played out like many of the other episodes where the kids try to come through for their dad in a big way. They proved to have great food service skills, they went out of their way to make sure they didn't look like failures to the man who takes care of them, and they came to realize all their crazy efforts worked out for everyone involved. Guy Grazer was also a big positive in how he may be tough on the outside, but on the inside he knows good food and business when he sees it, and pretty much promoted Lynn's table as a must-go place on national TV. This may not be the best episode of season 6 since we're not even close to the halfway mark at the time of this video, but in my opinion, I can't see how anyone can say this episode is absolutely horrible, but I welcome the challenge. With that said, I give Dine and Bash a 9 out of 10. Well folks, that concludes my review of Dine and Bash. I will end this review with something that really annoys me and probably will from here on out. Rita was absent from the episode because she was visiting Lori for some mother-daughter golf game. I don't know why, but that felt like a very cheap way to remind the audience that Lori still exists and how dispensable she's become as of late. That's where Todd comes in, and I'm starting to see him as either the unofficial third parent or the unofficial 12th sibling of the family, or simply the replacement for Lori when the parents aren't around to drive Vanzilla. Just seeing Todd in the family hug doesn't sit right with me at all. If it were Lori, that hug would have looked a lot more wholesome, but with a robot... Well, I think you can see where I'm going with this, and you'll see Todd doing this sort of thing again in the episode So Far So Good. But anyway, as far as the rest of this episode goes, what did you guys think of it? Love it? Hate it? Something you would add? Change? Keep it as it is? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to this channel for the latest Loud House content. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys for the next video, but until then, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, signing off. Peace out, home slices.